The threat of Trump tariffs back on the front burner, and it's shifting focus on the federal campaign trail.
We choose our own allies in Canada. We choose how we engage those allies. We are sovereign. So I take note of the President's comment. I don't take direction from it.
Liberal leader Mark Carney resuming the role of Prime Minister, responding to Donald Trump's escalated threats over automobile tariffs, and he's not alone.
I have a further message for President Trump. If you decide to go down this road, this is what's going to happen. Yes, you'll do damage to us in the short term, but we will fight back and we will build back.
To describe what has happened when Donald Trump stabs us in the back, it's a betrayal.
And while the twists and turns of this trade war have the makings of a bestseller, they could also spell doom and gloom for booksellers in our province. More than 50% of the books sold in Canada are printed in the United States.
That includes books that are written by Canadian authors. That includes a lot of books that are written right here in Edmonton by Edmonton authors.
Books are on the federal government's list of products that could be subject to 25% counter tariffs.
Bothers me that books might suddenly increase in price a lot because reading is such an essential part of our culture and our society.
Booksellers hoping Canadians will weigh in and urge the government against this form of tariff retaliation. Karen, let's maybe start on pressing pause on the election campaign as Donald Trump ratchets up the trade war. What do you now see coming of the Canada-U.S. relationship?
You know, it reminds me of a lesson that I learned when I was young and that I try and teach my kids too. Your friend at any time really could become an enemy. So what's important is that you like yourself. You know how to work with yourself. And so I think that it's a lesson that Canada can learn from all of this tariff catastrophe and chaos. What's really important is that we are strengthening what we can do as Canadians for ourselves and what we can do to increase production, to increase manufacturing, to make sure things are available for Canadians to be able to use for Canadians' use, rather than always having to rely on other countries. So right now it's America. If our only strategy is to just go and run out to the UK and try and make that everything, it's also not going to work for Canadians. So I think what's important is that we are taking the time to build within Canada and try and thrive kind of on our own. You can have allies, but you don't have to do everything with everyone.
Danielle, how do you see tariff threat developments over the past few days changing or impacting the dynamics of the federal election?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen the Liberals significantly close a gap that people thought would have been insurmountable with not only the changeover from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney, but also a lot of this has happened because of the concerns about the conservative proximity to Donald Trump. So mega maple has been a term tossed around by Carney and other, not Carney himself, but by other candidates. And you have Canadians who are concerned about whether or not there's a relationship that bodes poorly for them with Pierre Poilievre versus Mark Carney, who is sort of an unknown for us right now, I would say.
Karen, if we move away from the political element, what do you make of books being a potential casualty in the trade war?
Yeah, there is many casualties. The list is very long. I went on today to do some research on what actually are we looking to see increase based on tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, and books is on that list, but there's so many other items that are also a problem. Books is a problem, of course, because we are a society that is built on knowledge, and I think most are, and it's really important that we do have access. But what I think is important is if the price of books are going up, we need to make sure we're supporting our local libraries. Things that are already in press, we can still continue to utilize. And that is a great source to try and get things if, say, your pockets are not too deep. Because a lot of us are going to be paying a lot more for many different products, and books is just one of those.
Danielle, you're a published author, and I noted today Ground Cherries is sold out, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, well, way to go, right on. Still, who do you see suffering most, though, from a 25% counter tariff on books?
Yeah, you have schools. Textbooks haven't really been a part of the discussion, but they are already really high in cost, and a 25% increase in that could make it astronomical for students. You have these small businesses, like you featured Magpie, there's also Porchlight, Audrey's book, who are having to look at how they can absorb 25% or pass it on to customers. On top of that, you also have authors, so people who are wanting to get into the publishing world. There's going to be, some hard questions, hard conversations about whether or not booksellers are wanting to proceed given the tariffs, if they want to take a chance on new voices. So these are all things that we don't really know the consequences yet.
Yeah, the impact could be far-reaching. Now, still with fallout from the Trump tariff war, there are calls for WestJet to cancel a contract with a company owned by a controversial billionaire.
Yeah, I would agree 100% that we should cut ties with anything to do with Elon Musk. I believe that he's a divisive force in the world right now, and so I don't think we should be supporting that.
The Calgary-based airline announced last summer it was partnering with TELUS to provide access to in-flight Wi-Fi through Starlink, and only recently started rolling it out. In a statement this week, WestJet said guests value in-flight activity, and it selected the vendor offering the best experience. And while that's prompted an online push to reconsider and respond like Ontario, which has ripped up a $100 million Starlink contract, some suggest that's just politicking.
Wrap themselves in the flag or put the hockey jersey on, or it's a kind of manipulation of fear as well. I'm the guardian of your interest. That I think really sort of torques a lot of this stuff.
Others, though, say Canada is relying too much on a foreign entity.
Like water and hydro, it's a critical infrastructure for Canada. I would advocate that we look to our own solutions and look for solutions that we have more control over and protect our sovereignty.
As of 2023, Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, the sixth largest internet provider to Canadians. Danielle, where do you weigh in on backlash against U.S. corporate entities with ownership ties to the Trump White House? Should Canadians be severing as many of those ties as possible?
I think when we are looking at building infrastructure, something like satellite technology is going to be particularly difficult to replace, and certainly not within the timeliness that we would expect. So we are stuck dealing with the U.S. as a trading partner in many ways. It would be, we also just don't have the same level of investment or same population. So there's this very real consequence that we're bumping up against with the dismantling of decades of free trade. And I think we're going to see the tension as consumers have to contend with, do they want in-flight Wi-Fi? Do they want it more than they want the perception of connection with the United States?
Karen, to what degree do you see consumers ultimately dictating how Canadian companies, WestJet or otherwise, navigate the turbulent trade dynamics and who they do business with?
Yeah, I think it's actually something that consumers and we as consumers have always had the ability to vote with our dollars per se, and also with our cents. I think that it's important to note there has always been choice in consumerism. Yes, we don't have a lot of satellite technology providers, but there's also not many providers, for example, for EPCOR or other utilities, but we do have the ability to shop around and try and make sure that what we are purchasing aligns with our values. So my hope is that from this, people are starting to kind of reduce a bit of consumerism in the first place. I think that's already happened when people have recognized and realized, wow, we really do buy a lot of things from Americans. Maybe I don't so much need that extra pair of shoes or whatever it is. I think that we have always had the ability to say, I want to purchase from this or not. And I think that we can continue to do that as consumers.
If you are one of the millions who have sent away a saliva sample to DNA testing company 23andMe, you might want to take note.
This is not a password. This is not some easily changeable personal information. You cannot change your genetic data. And so if it falls into the wrong hands, you could be potentially exposed in ways we're just beginning to understand.
23andMe has filed for bankruptcy protection to facilitate a sale. And should the company change hands, there are concerns over what happens to its massive DNA database.
It could be used, for example, by an insurance company to deny you coverage. It could be used to deny you employment or to terminate your employment. It could be used in immigration cases if it falls into the hands of law enforcement agencies.
23andMe is telling customers there will be no changes to its existing privacy policy, but
those policies can change. It's hard for people to be able to predict or control how their information is used in the future.
23andMe, one of several genetic testing companies offering customers the opportunity to learn more about ancestry. Danielle, how big of an eye-opener is this? And is it something customers should have considered in the first place?
I mean, I would say so. Me and my family have certainly not done it. Now, one of the benefits of being Métis is we often have genealogical charts that explain who we are and where we came from. And I know not everybody has access to that level of information, but this is like giving your DNA, the most personal information you can imagine, to a company that you can't guarantee is going to stay in business or that the information will stay within that company. Really should be something that you thought about before you spit in that tube. That said, I think people can still take some steps moving forward to mitigate the risk, but ultimately, we don't know where this information is going to end up.
Karen, and regardless of whether it's genetic testing that's involved, how might developments like this involving privacy policy reshape your consumer habits?
I'm a person that always turns off the cookies. I'm a person that constantly says, no, my camera is not on, my mute is on. I think that privacy, a lot of people say, well, they already have all your information. There's really nothing that you could do about it. But I think that it's important that we all recognize, again, as I said, as consumers, we all have agency. There is some ability to keep some information sacred and close to ourselves. And so I think as much as you can do that, it's important to do that. I hope that people recognize that and start doing that. You don't have to give your information up for free. And in this case, you actually paid to give your information. So yeah, hopefully people take a lesson from this. There's other companies other than 23andMe. So let's hope that they aren't still continuing to do these. It's okay to talk to your family. You can get family history from many different ways.
Yeah, it generates some really interesting conversations, doesn't it? All right, time for one more topic, and that is the naming of this year's Calgary Stampede Parade Marshal.
I can't wait to see you on Friday, July 4th.
Let's go, girls.
That's right, the one and only Shania Twain, top-selling female country pop artist of all time.
It's exciting. She's Canadian. Shania Twain is really badass.
A country music icon, and we couldn't be happier.
And she's no stranger to Wild Rose Country.
The city of Calgary and province of Alberta have always held a very special place in my heart.
Calgary, Edmonton as well. Who can forget Shania Twain firing up Oilers fans with a concert ahead of Game 4 of last year's Stanley Cup final? Karen, what do you make of the selection of Shania Twain as this year's Stampede Parade Marshal?
I think it's a great selection. I was actually surprised that she hasn't been the marshal before. She is Canadian, as they said, and not all the marshals in history have been. There has been lots of prominent Canadians, astronauts and actors and different people, Indigenous leaders, which has been really neat to see. So I think that she'll do a great job. Yeehaw, let's go, Shania.
She probably has the hat for it as well. Danielle, with any luck, maybe the Stampede will end up following in the footsteps of a repeat Alberta performance through the Stanley Cup Finals, be that either the Oilers or the Flames.
That's right. We can hope.
Okay, we've left ourselves, I'm pretty sure, with enough time for a round of winners or losers. Karen, who or what tops your lists?
Yeah, for me, as I'm sitting out here in the snow, the winner is anybody who got off the white mud last night because it was a mess. They had to shut down the road. And then I think for a loser, there's a lot of money that has been lost through LINC, the language income instruction for newcomers, which is going to be really problematic for that community.
Yeah, that is a building story indeed. Danielle, how about you take us home?
Yeah, our winner has to be Louise Penny, who donated $50,000 to the Haskell Library, which is a library on the border of U.S. and Canada. And Canadians have been banned from entering unless we go through the port of entry. So that's really negative. Losers, I have to say there's this great piece in DSMOG about Danielle Smith's trip to Prager University to talk to Ben Shapiro, both of who have engaged in a lot of climate denial activities. So I'm going to call that the loser of the week.
Yeah, that is a story we've been talking about through the week, and now that it's over, the event, I'm sure we'll be talking about it some more next week also. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly. Hope you have an awesome weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.